Welcome back to the Jersey Oddcast with Joseph F. Berenato, Gabriel J. Donio, and me, Gina Rullo. Happy New Year,
Happy
guys.
New
What's
Year.
happening?
Happy New Year.
How was everybody's New Year's? Did you guys have fun? Well, I mean, Gabe, I know you did. We were
Oh,
together.
well then, yeah,
It's always
absolutely you
good to
had fun. Mine was
Well,
quiet.
of course.
Mine was nice and quiet.
Like cemetery
No, 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 no,
quiet?
not. Well, I mean, I did watch Ghostbusters 2, which is my favorite New Year's movie of all time. So if you want to take the whole cemetery quiet ghost thing, well, then, yeah, we'll go with that. But last I checked, I don't
nice.
remember any giant statues of Liberty wandering through the cemetery, so maybe not. Have you seen
Yeah,
Ghostbusters 2, Gina?
What year did that come out?
1989?
yeah. It's a while back.
I may have. I don't think I have watched it since. To be very fair, the original Ghostbusters I did see in the movie theater where I lived as a child and had a rip in the screen, and I love that movie ever since then. That old movie theater. It's a great old one. It used to be a one screen
Oh,
movie
like an old
theater,
movie house.
and it was air cooled.
Ooh,
Yes, it was
Yeah,
air
it
cooled.
was. Yeah, no air conditioning.
They just
Air
opened the
that's
cooled.
awesome.
doors. Yeah, it was very
Speaking of
cool.
large things on New Year's Eve, there was the large blueberry drop in town. I know people attended that. I think I had a decent attendance, although there was some heavy
Yeah,
weather,
yeah.
Joe,
There
huh?
was there
On
was a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and lightning strikes around, from what I understand. But I don't think that stopped people from rushing out in the last half hour to make sure that they caught it, which is cool because, as I understand, it's been gaining a lot of traction in the area recently, and has become something of a destination for New Year's Eve.
I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, I described it to some of the people I work with, and they're, in Philadelphia and in Chicago, and they're like, "You drop a what?" I'm like, "Well, it's not a real blueberry. It's more of like a symbol of a blueberry kind of a thing."
Yeah.
And they seem intrigued. And, the fireworks sounded great. Thankfully, because of the thunder and lightning, our dog Fenway was not traumatized by the fireworks. She was still recovering from the lightning and thundering earlier in the
Okay.
evening.
I would like to say that I was awake to even hear the fireworks from my house, but that would be a lie.
No,
Wow.
we heard them loud and clear, but we have really good for
Oh, yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure.
you know. But, the new year also brought with it a little bit of sadness too. Um, on Friday, January 3rd, Falcone, who was a former council member, he was also super involved in our community. He was a past King Lion from the Hammonton Lions Club, a past president of the Hammonton Kiwanis Club. He was active with the St. Vincent de Paul Society, the Hammonton Democratic Club, and he received honors like former Democrat of the Year and fourth degree member of the Knights of Columbus St. Vincent Pallotti Council. In addition to the fact that he was also involved with numerous other groups. We all knew Anthony from his work with town council. In his professional life, he was a former director of inmate services at the Atlantic County Justice Facility. And I just want to take a moment and really, recognize Anthony and everything that he did for the town of Hammonton and its community. Gabe and I covered him for many years when he was on and off council, he was involved in the Democratic Club. Gabe, do you have anything you'd like to share about Anthony?
It's just, a community guy in an era where there were people who stepped up and wanted to join town council and wanted to join all these civic clubs you mentioned, Gina. He was a King Lion, as I was for the Hammonton Lions Club, and so we knew each other that way too through the Lions Club. And you look back, we were young in our 20s when we were covering him on council, but he always took time to speak with us and always took time to treat the paper with respect. I think he enjoyed the fact that the paper was run locally, and I think for us back then it meant a lot to have someone on council. We had several members on both sides of the aisle, but Anthony, in addition to all the civic things and other things, he's just he was a
Yeah.
funny guy. If you talked with him, you usually would have a laugh or some kind of reason to laugh, and I enjoyed talking with him a lot. And of course, Gracie was never far away, his wife, from him when we were covering politics. He made covering politics a lot more human and a lot more fun, at least in my view.
Joe?
Yeah, no, I didn't have very many interactions with him, but he was And I've said this about several people in town. He was one of the few people that you didn't hear very many bad things about, which in a small town, especially when somebody is involved with politics and involved in as many organizations as he was, that's a rarity for people to be like, oh yeah, no, he was a good guy, and not hear negativity, which sometimes the silence in that aspect speaks far more than anything anyone could say, because you can always find oh, did you see the way that man stirs his coffee? I can't believe he'd go out in public like that. No, uh, never anything like that. And I'll sign off also on Gracie. She was my Sunday school teacher, I think, in seventh grade. And seventh grade specifically, you're kind of at the point where you're done with Sunday school. You don't care. You don't want to learn a thing about it. And she always kept us engaged, always kept us interested, and was always just fun. So my condolences to her as well.
For anybody listening who would like to go, a massive Christian burial will be celebrated on Saturday, January 11th at 12 p.m. at St. Joseph Church on 3rd Street. Earlier, a viewing will be held from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Burial will follow at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery. Again, our thoughts are with Gracie Falcone and his children and grandchildren. In other news, I was getting gas the other day at Allen Rich's, as one does. I happened to notice that there is new signage at the plaza where Flyers Gymnastics used to be and is now a couple other things where Costello's is. What is it called again? Did you guys notice that? Anyone else clock it?
I believe it's Hammonton Town Center.
Town center, yes. Yeah.
I think. No, I don't think it's Town Square.
What do we
And it's like
think
a it's like
about
it's
that?
shaped like a house, like
Yeah.
the sign, and it's green with white lettering. First time in my entire life I remember a sign or a name being on that strip center or that plaza. That plaza was always just sort of
Yeah.
unnamed. We were talking about this. What did you say? Plus Markets and Flyers
Plus Market was
Gymnastics in
there,
there,
Flyers
Joe.
Gymnastics,
That's your right.
Family Dollar for a number of years more recently. And it never had a name. It was always the Flyers Plaza or the Unemployment Building. Yeah.
Right. But people would give it
Yeah.
that name. It didn't have a
No.
sign on it.
No.
And then,
So,
because we have Raspberry Run, Peachtree Plaza, Blueberry Crossing, Broadway
I think
Square,
so.
Broadway
yeah.
Plaza. And then the one where Walmart is, what is that? Hamilton Square? Does
Yep.
that have a
Does it?
name?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Hamilton Square. That's
And then of
Hamilton.
course you have the Village
Yeah.
right next to
So
Which is
this.
why
it's
I think this is Hamilton Town Center.
oh, Village Shops.
Yeah.
How could I forget Village
Village
Shops?
Shops right next across the street there, and on the pike next to it. I was going to say that we were talking about this. If anyone else remembers out there, Grants, that was where the unemployment office was, and now Harbor Freight is now. It was Grants on that side, and the Plus Market was on the other side, and later Flyers Gymnastics, which now what AutoZone,
Yes.
I believe,
Yes. Because yes. That one is
and
AutoZone.
Sherwin
Yes. And
Williams.
Sherwin-Williams, absolutely.
The whole place is filled for the first time, so I'm assuming that's why I finally got a
That's
sign
that's the
and a
first time
name.
I can ever
That's
remember
pretty exciting.
being filled. Yeah.
Filled with retail, I said I should say.
It's not a plaza that I go to often. I'm not often repainting or in need of hardware, and I definitely would not know how to do anything on my car, I admit. Which made me to think of other places in town where we'd maybe not go, or like how do we get there? I remember early on when I was working and we were, writing and all that. And I asked Gabe for directions on how to get to Marlin Avenue. And this is pre Google Maps or GPS in your
Right.
phone and cars. And Gabe had no direction and had no idea how to get there. I was like, how do you not know? This is your hometown. I've only been in town like an hour. How do you not know how to get to that street? In my town,
My
I knew how to get
response was,
everywhere.
my
Wh-
response was, and now I look back and my response then was inaccurate. But my response was, well, I don't really know anybody on Marlin Avenue, so I don't go there. So why should I know where it is? Which is the
Oh yeah.
Hamilton response, I think. But or the Jersey response, and a little bit of attitude to it. But it turned out actually I do have a family member that lived on or lives on Marlin. So like Marlin,
Nice.
and it's not completely true that I didn't know anybody. But at the time, I didn't really go there that often.
But you know where Pressy Street is.
Yeah,
Yes, I do know where
yeah, it's
Prentice
a dead
Street
end
is.
right off of Cherry.
Cherry.
Yeah,
Hmm?
Cherry, right? I know it. Right.
Have you
You're
discovered
saying I
any
don't go there
streets,
I'm sorry.
either?
Joe, in that you recently have you discovered any street names that you didn't know before in recent
I
years?
have discovered that there are streets that are named, and I still don't know where they are. I've been fuzzy, and again, because I don't know anybody who lives back there. The roads that,
The
yeah,
Chamidonians.
the is that uh the road behind Berwyn. Is that starts with an M? I think. Mer.
Mardor,
No, 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 no. Mardor comes
Mardor.
off of Woodlawn and out.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
no,
know what you
that
mean.
one I know, because in my mind it's always Mordor, even though it's not. And I
Mm,
can remember
no,
when they built all of that, and that used to just be a dirt road back into a bunch of fields. That's how I know where that one is. But on the other side of
yeah,
Woodlawn, those little streets back in there, in between Woodlawn and Broadway, I have no idea what any of them are named.
Bryn Mawr, Wayne,
Wayne, that one. Wayne,
Berwyn.
I
yeah.
had no idea where that was at all. Somebody's
So here's got to remember them. They're all named. The developers were named them after towns in Pennsylvania. Bryn Mawr, Wayne. What else is out there?
Berwyn,
Berwyn. These are all mainline
that you
towns.
mentioned that makes sense.
On the, yeah. So when they developed that, I don't remember why. Maybe somebody does know why. Could tell us. They were named after these communities on the main line.
Hmm.
Those streets.
I would never have put the two together because, again, I don't know the names of the streets.
There you go.
I don't know what that says about us, guys. Like, should we be worried about
No, it
ourselves?
says that there is always something new to learn. Maybe, I
Right.
guess.
Okay.
But what do you mean that we don't go to those streets, or what
Yeah,
should we?
like I feel a little bad that we don't go there.
I
Like,
don't
should we
know
be
if
more
Uh,
involved?
it was Vineland, you wouldn't feel bad. It's a bigger area, I guess. Do you feel badly because it's a smaller town,
It's a
or
smaller town. We should know where everything
I
is,
mean,
you know?
do you know everyone in town?
No, I don't know everybody in
we
town.
could
Oh,
organize
But,
a field
okay.
trip, maybe bring
Do
a
you know where
map.
Price Street
Yeah,
is?
Price is right off of Line Street.
Do you guys know where Price Oh, Joe
I
Bernardo.
grew up around the corner from there. Same thing with Rocco is the next street over.
Okay.
And that used to be unnamed street.
Yes.
They named it Rocco when 911 came in.
It was just unknown
Unnamed.
street?
It was unnamed. Yeah, unnamed
Unnamed?
road or unnamed street.
and by 911, you mean the police,
The whole
you
the
know,
whole
rescue
system.
call
Once
type.
that came in,
Yeah,
streets that previously had no names or that were considered paper roads, most of them got actual names. And like our farm, for instance, until the 911 system came into Hammonton, we didn't have a street number. We were just 10th Street in the expressway. But once the system came in, then it was, I think, because it's been a while, I think we were assigned 964 10th Street, which we hadn't had up
yeah.
until that point for 80 years.
Okay. I'm just
Well, I
curious
mean,
because,
you're
like, not everyone knows about all these little streets, and there's some little ones that pop up here and there, and people are like, where is that? Does
we're
everyone
still
know?
rural enough. I mean, we were talking about Myrtle
Yes.
Street, that we have quasi dirt roads, or
Hmm.
unpaved quasi, and they do have a name. And now Myrtle has a bigger purpose because of what we see with Tuckahoe Turf Farm and the soccer tournaments. Way
Oh,
more
yeah.
use than that road ever received. It's I would still say, you know, it's an outlier. How often I mean, local people, how often are you on Myrtle?
Unless,
I, I don't
unless you
think
live out there or unless you're visiting someone or going to the turf farm, it's not like you got to drive that way on the way to go to the grocery store. It's way out of the way.
and this is up on Route 206
Is
for
Myrtle
anyone who might
paved
be
all the
wondering.
way?
Hmm?
Is
Is it
Myrtle
what?
paved all the way?
No, I don't think so. I think it's partially paved. I don't think it's all
No,
paved.
I think there's in the
When's the last
center.
time you were out there?
Yeah, because I think when you go off of 206, it's paved, but then there's a portion that's not. I think still.
I think this is going to have to be a little homework assignment for you, Gabe. You're going to have to go find out if Myrtle's all the way paved. Or
Yeah,
Joe.
I guarantee you, it doesn't look like you know a typical residential street in Hammonton in terms of paving. I doubt it.
And the other thing I've noticed in the early part of this new year is that one of my favorite shows is no longer on HBO, at least according to the internet. I have not checked because I don't want to be disappointed already by 2025. 2024 was such a letdown in a lot of ways that I really don't want to start off my 2025 in a negative light. But according to Reddit and TikTok, which therefore it must be true, The West Wing is no longer on, what is that, Max?
Oh, that was my go-to. If I had didn't have anything else to watch, I'd turn on The West Wing and watch a couple of episodes, and all would be right with the world for a while.
I mean, yeah. I
Still have a
mean, how many
DVD
great
player?
episodes are there? There's so many. Seasons of them.
Well, still have a
I
DVD
do.
player?
It's one
That's
of
we can
those.
make that. Do you have the
No,
DVDs? I don't know.
I don't, because it was one of those shows that, I mean, it's been streaming on HBO for ages, almost a decade.
Yeah.
And oh, that makes me wonder. I hope Newsroom is still streaming. I haven't checked that. I mean, it's an HBO show, but it's Aaron Sorkin, and that was my other go-to. If West Wing didn't restore my faith in humanity and in Washington, then Newsroom would at least restore my faith in the people who hold Washington accountable. And like,
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
it's a
they're
comfort
both
show.
fictional TV
yeah,
shows,
I mean,
so
they are, but
but they are entertaining and made you
yeah.
feel good. No
Escapism.
matter what, people have different political views, but it was entertaining
Oh, no
television.
doubt.
My question then, why we don't know why that it was taken off and abruptly, because it was
I th-
abrupt, right? They were basically like, "That's it, we're done," and they didn't tell anybody, did they?
Well, are they supposed to send out a card like, "Hey, West Wing nerds, like,
That
here's
would be
A
nice.
little note from Aaron Sorkin say, hey, we're moving your show."
Let me ask this way to Joe, who's our even bigger than, obviously way bigger than me, Star Trek fan. If that happened on Paramount Plus and they just we're done, we're gonna stop running Star Trek shows, and they just didn't tell anybody, how would that go over with the Trekkers? They'd be happy about
Oh,
that.
Lord.
Would there be a
R- Red
riot?
alert, phasers firing, and truthfully, sometimes not with the TV series, but that has happened with the movies, because they have had contracts years in advance that this streaming service will have the movies for so many months or for this long or so forth.
Mm.
But one would think, with Paramount Plus being the home of Star Trek, that it would be constantly there. But every now and again, you go and, like, all right, I'm going to tune in and watch Wrath of Khan, and it's not there, and it's on.
Oh, as one does, as one says on a Saturday, "I'm just gonna watch The Wrath of Khan."
Yes, like one does on a random Saturday.
No.
That
No.
It
does happen.
it happens
That
often.
that may not have ever happened for you, but it does happen. Joe and I
Yeah,
would do it. I know my
just
brother
like
would
you
do it.
would be like, "Oh, I think I'm going to watch, I don't know, Gilmore Girls," whatever it is that you decide to watch as comfort food.
Say
West
something like
Wing,
that.
Gilmore Girls, those are good. Sex in the City. Those are like my three go-to shows when I need comfort. But The West Wing is very much escapist television. We'll be like, "Oh, let's watch a great episode." And then, at Christmas time, we always watch Gabe, what's the one we always watch with Toby and the jacket and everything?
In Excelsis Deo, which was the
Yeah.
first one, the first Christmas episode. Always great, and was played and played and played almost like it was like Peanuts in the beginning back in '99. That thing just was like on a loop because people liked it so much. But
Shibboleth.
again,
That's a great episode.
that was a both sides of the aisle kind
Yeah.
of episode. I think people who can't get behind, hey, we want to honor our homeless veterans and make sure that they know that we love them and we care about them. That was a great message, not just for Christmas, but anytime. But I don't know, you look at it. I just would like to know why. I mean, was it being watched less? I mean, it has been a while since it was on, but it just celebrated 25 years since it was started. So I don't know.
A little internet search while we're doing this recording, it says that it was a licensing issue.
Oh,
So,
Okay.
well, I'm grateful that we have the DVD set. We are such West Wing nerds that we have it twice. In fact, my mother has one set of Gabe's DVDs because then Gabe got a box set of the whole series. So we have two. My mother has one of them right now in New York because she likes to kick back and watch that. She'll binge 10 episodes at a time just to have a great day. And I can't blame her on that
no.
one. So we always have it. But, it's like, oh, I got to switch the input. It's just a pain to switch to using the DVD player. And, You become spoiled when it's right there on
Yeah,
Max.
that's true. Especially when
Well,
you consider when we were growing up, like you actually had to walk over to the television and slide a switch if you wanted to play a video game, and now like, oh, I've got to press one more button to watch a disc. I'll sit through the commercials and watch whatever's on.
yeah, and 15 or 30 years from now, the kids then will say, you had to put an actual thing that wasn't a chip in your head and just watch the game. What? It was on
Yeah.
a what? A TV or whatever. But look, we're always advancing, so that's a great thing. Well, and speaking of that, maybe someone else will pick it up. Another streaming service
I think it's
anywhere.
on Prime or Apple. You can pay for it there.
Yeah, but you
It's
Okay,
just not
but
yeah, but
free.
you got to pay.
it's just
You
not
got to
free.
pay
Well,
per episode. That was the nice that's been on Prime forever, where
Yeah.
you pay like $2 an episode. But it's
yeah,
nice when it's included in the subscription cost. And wherever it is, I hope that they either bring it back to a streaming service where it's included with a subscription, or I get the boxed set because every Thanksgiving I love watching the episode where President Bartlett and crew call the Butterball hotline. That, for my money, is some of
right.
the most enjoyable television ever for a Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm convinced he was
Oh
ad
yeah,
libbing, like that they just said to Martin Sheen, just whatever you want to do, just we'll do take after take until it works out. I could be wrong, but when he's
I love
talking
the
about,
name he comes up
y-
with and
yeah,
the
right,
Joe
and
the
then
Petherton.
it
There's with an
streets.
and
H and
then
there's a
it
T
was
in there
given to him by
somewhere.
the king of whatever it was, auto sales or whatever.
Yeah,
He was gonna say it was given to him by an actual king, but all these things, we look back on it. People who love a show, well, I don't care what era it's from, you love everything about the show. You love the characters, you love the writing, and everything with the look of it. And I think West Wing was one of those shows that really kind of embedded itself in a lot of
yeah,
people's hearts. So,
yeah.
Speaking of government, the state of the state address to be delivered by Governor Murphy for the final time will be delivered on Tuesday, January 14th at 3 p.m. at the New Jersey State House in Trenton. And you can watch this if you're interested on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, and a couple of different ways. New Jersey also marked an increase in the minimum wage with the start of the year. I believe it's now 15 like 49 for for the larger employees, and it's a little less for the smaller businesses. So that's something to do. Is there a reason why people should read up on the state of the state address who are just general New Jersey residents?
well, I mean, we talk about this being the odd cast, and I think you certainly can put Jersey government under the umbrella of odd. And it's always good to watch it because you don't know what's going to be said, how it's going to be said. It's been 8 years of the Murphy administration. I also think if you, on a local level or county level, when you think about municipalities and you think about school boards, this is how stuff gets funded. This is how things get paid for. So, and what the priorities are of the government are laid out in that state of the state address. So I do think it's important if you care about what they're carving up the
Yeah.
pot. How are they carving it up?
Yeah,
You know,
I'll agree. Whether you like the governor, whether you don't like the governor, either way, I think that you would be equally invested in what the man has to say, whether you want to stand there and cheer or whether you want to rip it apart, because that's exactly it. This is what the current administration feels is important to highlight. It is what the current administration feels is important to tell you what their plans are. And for anyone who is even remotely interested in where their tax dollars go, this is the easiest way to find out where they want to spend your money. Whether you agree with it or not, it's the best way to do it. And the same thing on the county and the municipal level. But I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Attending and watching these meetings is wildly important because otherwise you're kind of just running around in the dark, and then you're caught off guard when this happens or that happens. Oh, well, I didn't know this was coming. Well, aren't they going to let us have a comment about this? Well, the comment period was 2 months ago and you missed it. So with the state of the state, especially leading into the last year of the Murphy administration, if you want to have any idea of where we're headed as a state And I, for one, have always been interested in where my tax dollars go. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said something like, "A well-informed electorate is the prerequisite for democracy," or something to that extent. And I think that's important. You need to know what the issues are. You need to know what's happening around you, and that starts at the local level and it goes all the way up. On the local level, it's are they making changes to your trash collection? What roads are being worked on? What's happening at the schools? What are the major projects? The state level, again, capital projects setting the tone for education, and then all the way up to the federal level. So you should try to watch these big events to see what the common themes are and to keep your eye out as it trickles its way on down to you.
Funny that
Got
you mention roads projects on the municipal level because that is a good way to find out roads that you never knew existed. Case in point,
Right.
couple of years ago when Gatto Road made its way onto the repaving program. I'm like, I've never heard. I went to school with a kid whose last name was Gatto, but I didn't know they had a whole road. So that was something new that I learned just by paying attention.
See that? By showing up, going to a meeting, you found a whole
Yeah,
new road just that you never knew
yeah,
before.
and
And I will say this is the other thing on what being the end of just the last note on state of the state. This is it. This is the last one of the Murphy administration. So, it could be interesting. He might have some razzle dazzle, little fireworks display right at the end because this is the last one he's going to give. So, the other reason above all to watch this one and maybe the first one is to get a bookend on this guy's 8 years, the governor's 8 years in office. So, it could be another reason to watch it.
and I believe it was Jed Bartlett who once said history is decided by those who show up. So
Correct. So that ties in with that. That's very good. Very good of you to know that, sir.
it forecast for the year. And speaking of forecast, Joe, do you have one?
you were asking about a forecast. Well,
I was
yeah, it
actually.
sounds like it is time for the Oddcast forecast. According to the app on my smartphone, sponsorships are available. It's going to continue to be cold this week. Wednesday, we're looking at a high of 32 and a low of 16, partly cloudy. Thursday, we're looking at a high of 32 and a low of 22, and it's supposed to be windy. And Friday's high is going to be a little bit warmer, 37, with a low of 23. That's all I have for the forecast at the moment. Back to you, Gina.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. Hammonton is not the most hilly of places. And having lived in upstate New York for a good portion of my life, I love sleigh riding. And Hammonton, like, is there great places for sleigh riding? To take your sled out as a kid, trudge up the hill, and then slide down, and then go back up and do it over and over again. Like, are there still places kids go legally?
Well,
I mean, we
yeah,
used to
we,
go
yeah,
when we were kids on Rainier Hill, which wasn't much of a hill off of Third Street there, but it was enough of an incline that you got some distance
Yeah,
right into the roadway. I mean, with your sled,
not just
which is very dangerous and should have been done. But we had a good and people that like that was a true sledding hill. I don't know. I mean, where do people go? They to
I know
sled. I, you
when
know,
I was a kid, we used to go to the top of the hill at Greenmount Cemetery, trudge up to the Civil War statue and get on and ride that all the way down and hope that you stopped before you went in the first road. But that was before they paved it, and they paved it sometime in the late 1980s. And once they did that, it was no longer the premier spot in town. But before that, good heavens, could you get some speed coming down that hill?
so that hasn't been paved all the
No.
time.
No, I can no, I
Oh,
remember the first winter that it was paved and we were wildly disappointed because the snow actually melted. Before that it was dirt roads all through there. And so then what we started
yeah, and it's not like Hamilton Lake freezes either, too. You can't really go ice
no,
skating.
no,
not anymore. I mean, you
there've been a
could. You're
couple
decades.
of years where it'll freeze a little bit by the shore, but that's and by the shoreline, I mean like, 5, 10 feet out from the canoe club. But that hasn't frozen in I I don't remember if I've ever seen it completely frozen.
Yeah,
I think
so
when I was younger, when
wants
I
to
say
let us
younger, I'm talking about 70s, 80s. But I mean, before that, there were pictures of people with bonfires on the lake. It's frozen over like the tundra and they're having parties out there and
Yeah,
all that. That is a bygone
yeah, and
era.
I know
I mean, but it did freeze over very thickly.
when we were kids also, there were a lot of people who used to go sledding down Suicide Hill, which is Pleasant Street and West End and Washington. And there's a reason that it earned that moniker, because if you're coming down Pleasant, those on West End just can't see you. So you were really taking life into your own hands, and it was wildly unsafe, but it had a real nice slope to it. So
But it's a paved road.
Total,
It's not
yeah,
like
but
a
you
grassy
total
you
hill.
had an
different,
actual
total
you had
different
an
land.
actual rail sled with
Yeah,
that then designed for icy roads. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, total different landscape. If literally today, meaning like today, if you went out to that same area of Suicide Hill, everything is
gone,
wiped out around it, and it is
gone.
just now going to be obviously the. Did you say the name of that? It was,
Street station.
what's the name? Pleasant Station, Pleasant Street Station. I keep wanting to say Shining Time Station. I don't know. That's not the same thing,
No.
Is
but
that from
I
Reading Rainbow?
Pleasant.
What is that from?
That was a Ringo
Yeah,
Starr thing, I
Oh.
yeah,
think. He was a conductor. It was a whole deal. It was like Reading Rainbow, but no, I mean, and look, time marches on. Like I said about video games and TV and like that, but it's definitely different now. When you would go down that hill on a bike or on a sled, you were ensconced in all these buildings around you. That was
yeah,
the other thing about it, because then the aggressive clothing factory
yeah.
was
The
still up
aggressive was, the
when
modern
we
was
were
still up.
kids.
Yeah, and so you
Yep,
had your
modern was still
visibility
up.
impeded on all sides.
So it was like almost a
Yeah,
canyon for a kid. It wasn't just that you were on a
yeah,
street.
and
Pretty
even
neat.
before I was a kid, also you had that rail line right there that was active, and I don't know if there were ever even gates there. So there was a good possibility if you were coming down on your bicycle, you could meet head on with a locomotive
Yep.
in the process, and that certainly would have altered the course of your day.
Yep.
You're saying a different train track than the one that's right through the
Yeah,
middle of town,
yeah,
or
no,
that one?
It was,
this was
yeah.
I think it was the Camden Atlantic. It was the one that the Blue Comet used to run on. And that would go right behind.
There's two rail lines. So there's Reading and Pennsylvania. It
Okay.
was Reading, the Reading, which became
Yeah.
Conrail.
And Conrail stood all
But
of
they would
that.
also use it for a dummy train. They would also use what Joe's talking about for a dummy train, a locomotive to move crates. They had like a small old
Hmm.
train. Like, I don't know, it wasn't a steam engine, but it was that when we were kids, it would move packages for Capelli, John L. Capelli, the building that was just torn down. So you would see that train go all the way in and across Orchard
Hmm.
Street, even on those rails. And
Was
and
it
and at one
parallel
time,
to Orchard Street, or
No,
was it
it was
parallel to
yeah,
West
perpendicular
End?
to
perpendicular,
Orchard
parallel
Street.
with the existing train tracks. The existing train tracks.
Eh,
Okay.
If you go out to the behind the ice cream parlor that's there now
Yeah.
in the building at the corner of
West End and
West
12th?
End and 12th, on the side you'll see the remnants of the Reading platform of the
Yeah.
rail
And
station.
actually,
It's in the
if
parking
you
lot.
walk out to Orchard, right behind where John Capelli's building used to be, at least 3 weeks ago, there were still train tracks in the ground there. Because yeah,
Wow.
because Conrail still owns all of it. I don't know what they plan on ever doing with it, but they still own that 15 or 20-foot wide stretch going through town.
Yep. And it would have extended across 54. There was a yard which is now behind
Hmm.
Wawa and behind
Yeah,
Peter Lumber and next to the water tower.
I can't imagine 2 trains going through town, I really can.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they
fairly
yeah
regularly.
for decades, and they both ended up in Atlantic City.
And did they both end up in Philly too, or no?
I think so.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
rail.
think about a monopoly
Yeah,
board.
the rail line
You
went.
know, you've got those four railroads on a monopoly board, and at
Yeah.
least two of them used to go through Hammonton.
Yeah, I
Hamilton's a
mean,
very special place.
well, listen, this is where I got to bust it out because a very first time oddcast moment. The town was once called the hub of South
Yes, it
Jersey.
was.
And the reason for that was the two rail lines, the White Horse Pike, the Black Horse Pike, 54, 559. Go down a list. 206, Pleasant Mills Road. I'm missing some, but right later the expressway, and this was sort of, they called it the hub of the wheel, the hub of South Jersey, because we were the center of it all, and everything ran through here. So I can't miss an opportunity to
No,
bring that up, odd
and
as it may
that
be.
continued well into the late 1980s at least, because I remember the signs when you would enter and exit Hammonton, like "Welcome to Hammonton, the hub of South Jersey." It was right there in 54 when you got in.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Before we wrap up for the day, I have to ask your opinion, Joe, on something because this is an ongoing debate, if you will, between Gabe and I.
So you want me to get in the middle?
Turkey. Yeah, of course, Joe. I mean, like, what else? You're a good friend. I mean, I know whose side
Again,
you're
he's
going to
to
be
the
on.
side, but we'll be in the middle.
Turkey, roast beef, General salami, the things you would make a sandwich with. What do you call
Lunch meat.
that? Cold cuts.
Lunch meat.
I grew up as lunch meat, but New York here, I marry New York, and New York literally says, no, it's cold cuts. It's not lunch meat. Still feel like lunch meat is what it is. Why do we call it lunch meat,
That's
Joe?
because when you have sandwiches at lunchtime, and this is the meat that you use to make said sandwich. So you have lunch meat. Not to be confused with luncheon meat, which I believe was a term specifically reserved for spam, but it's lunch meat. Yes, I know we've all seen the commercials. We're like, woo, getting cold cuts, and that's fine. That's what you call it in other regions. Like where they call it pop, and where they go and they get heroes. But here we have soda and hoagies, and we go to buy lunch meat.
But that
But
means you're only eating it one time a day. Whereas I feel like cold cuts, you can eat them any time of the day. There's no
you can eat
restriction.
lunch meat any
Yeah,
time of the day. It's
Why?
not
It's
like
lunch
just
meat.
because
It's
it's called
assigned a
lunch meat
meal.
doesn't mean you can't eat it at
yeah. And
nighttime.
You're
What are you going to be?
assigning it a
Oh,
time
well,
of
no, I
day.
mean think about it. You go to the
because it's
diner.
called
Are you eating breakfast sausage at night? I don't
Yes,
think
I was
so.
just going to say you go to the diner at 8 o'clock at night and you get a waffle off of the breakfast menu, but you're having breakfast for dinner. You still call it breakfast. It's breakfast
No,
food.
you're having a
right.
waffle. You're not eating breakfast waffle. You're eating a
No, no, wait a
waffle.
minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. When people make breakfast for dinner at home, they call it
Yeah,
breakfast for dinner.
Yes.
They don't call it eggs.
So you're having
They say, "Oh,
lunch meat for
yeah,
we're
dinner?
gonna have waffles. We're gonna have pancakes. We're gonna have eggs. We're gonna have breakfast for dinner."
yeah. Or like
Yes, but you're not saying we're having lunch meat for dinner. We're having
no,
cold
you're
cuts.
having lunch meat.
It's a tray of
Get the
cold
lunch meat
cuts.
out of the fridge. That's what you do.
Oh my
Or get the
god.
lunch meat out of the Frigidaire,
No.
depending on who you are.
That's
No.
right.
I think we're gonna have to put this as a poll to our listeners because no, I'm sorry, it's cold cuts. It's
Put
such
it
a
up
much
on the
more
odd poll.
universal, more encompassing, more welcoming term.
Cold cuts is a
I think
more
Cold
term.
cuts of meat.
Cold cut
Well, then lunch meat, which is so
cold
limiting.
cuts
You
sounds like
by
limited
something
by
it.
you do in my
definition it's cold.
profession.
It Yeah, yeah. By definition, it's
Yeah,
cold.
For your
How is that
current
yeah,
profession, Joe, you've had 100.
fair.
nothing welcoming? That's like saying, "Oh, we got a cold front coming in." It's welcoming.
Well,
What?
after a 90-degree day, a cold front would be welcoming.
I don't
That's a cool breeze moving
We'll put
in.
it
I
out
don't
to
have
we'll put it out.
sympathy.
We'll put a poll out there in the next day or so. We'll let people decide on that. Speaking of people who have watched the show, I really do want to say thank you to everyone who has DM'd and messaged us and commented
Yes.
on our posts and reached out to us or have seen us out and about. Thank you. We really appreciate everyone listening in. We're having a lot of fun with the show.
Yes.
I have to give a specific shout out to Daryl Salvatore, his wife, who saw us and took the time to say that he had just started watching it to watch it. And then we started talking about him and DNS subs, and he was just floored by that. Well, Daryl, listen, we are forever in your debt for the many, many great meals that we had there. But even more so is great just 2 days after we started to hear such great feedback. Thank you so much.
Hmm.
Joe, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, just thank you everyone who has watched so far, and please continue to do so.
Well, we'll be back next week. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can easily do that.
Yes, you can. We are on Facebook and Instagram under Jersey Oddcast. You can email us at jerseyoddcast@gmail.com or call us at 609-444-6178.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next
Thank you.
week.
See you next week.
Bye.